So now let's review some of the things that we saw when we just looked at that Java FX demo in Eclipse. So this is somewhat review. First of all, the launch method that you saw at the bottom is a static method defined in the application for launching Java FX applications. You might need to have a main method to actually produce that, to actually launch it. And you saw that at the bottom, but we removed it because, as it turns out, it's not required in Java in Eclipse. And from now on in the demos, we won't have it there because we simply don't need it. In some environments, though, you will need it. And the question about whether you do or do not need it is whether or not the system will allow you to get away without a main method. If it will go ahead and immediately execute your start method as part of JavaFX, and it will do so indirectly by doing a launch on it. So if that happens all automatically, then you're good to go. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to supply a main method, which in turn calls the launch method. So when you start a JavaFX application, either you've explicitly executed or invoked the method launch from within a main method, or if you've left that out, and if it's compatible to do that with the IDE that you're using, it would have done a launch for you automatically. Either way, ultimately it's going to execute the start method that you've overridden from the application class. What will happen within the start method that you then override with is this is where you would normally place user interface controls in a scene and then display the scene on a stage. That's exactly what we did in this small demo, and the little figure off to the right on this slide shows that. You'll see that there's a button placed inside of a scene, and the scene in turn is placed inside of a stage. This doesn't model all the different Java FX applications that we'll be doing, because not all things can be placed into a scene. And we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but a button is an example of something that can be placed straight into a scene. There are other things that cannot be, and in turn you would have to put them inside of a pane first, and we haven't defined pane yet, but we will momentarily. And in that case, figures that can't go directly into a scene would first of all go into a pane, and then the pane would go into the scene, and the scene would go into the stage. But in our particular demo, we were lucky we had a button, which is something that can go directly into a scene, and that was useful for our first demonstration because it eliminated having to introduce or talk about a pane, but that will come shortly. The stage object is essentially a window that appears on the screen. There's a sort of a theater analogy here, where we have a scene that's put on a stage and that we put actors on the scene, and those actors are essentially the panes and buttons and other things that can go inside of panes that go into the scene. When the application is launched, we automatically get a primary stage created for us. It would seem silly not to go ahead and use that, but just to be clear, you don't have to. You can completely ignore it and go ahead and make your own stages if you wish. But since it has been created for you and it's ready to go, it only makes sense to go ahead and use it. There's nothing special about the primary stage other than it's the first stage that automatically gets created for you. Other than that, it's no different than any other stage that you would produce yourself. And we will see some examples where we use not only the primary stage but an additional stage that we create. What will happen in such cases is for every stage you create there will be a separate window, which means the Java applications that you produce can have multiple windows all running at the same time. So you can create as many stages as are appropriate for the application that you're designing. In this next demo, we're going to exactly demonstrate what we talked about in the previous slide, that is multiple stages. So we're going to have the primary stage that gets created for you for free, and then another stage that we'll produce in the code. So we're going to go out to the Eclipse IDE now and demonstrate this code and then talk it through.